As you progress through your learning journey, you will become quite familiar with constants, variables, and data types. In short, variables and constants allow you to organize and store values of the same type. Think of variables as storage pots in a kitchen. Each pot is used to store specific ingredients. One day you use a pot to store all your bananas in, and the next day you use it for oranges. So every day the contents inside of the pot may change. Similarly, the values that are stored in a variable may be changed, whereas the value of a constant cannot be changed. Ultimately, both are used to store specific data types. Don't worry if this sounds complicated now. This video will help you build a foundational understanding of what constants and variables are and how they are used. Variables are an essential part of programming, and they are used to store all different types of data. You might even say they are the cornerstone of programming because they allow you to work with and manipulate data. Variables allow you to make the exact same code produce different results, making your programs versatile. Therefore, it's important that you can identify variables and recognize how they are used. In Swift, you use constants and variables to create and store values. A constant is a value that can't be changed, while a variable can store a value that can be changed over the lifetime of the app. Now, let's explore the syntax you use to create or declare constants and variables. To declare a constant, you start by typing the keyword let, followed by the name of the constant you want to create. This name can be almost anything you want. Next, you need to assign a value to be stored in this constant, and to do that, you type the equal symbol. The equal symbol is known as the assignment operator. You will learn more about operators later, but for now, just know that you need to use the equal symbol to assign a value to be stored. Finally, you need to type a value. Swift organizes its data into many different types, and you will learn about them soon. In this case, let's use a simple numerical value such as 10. Recall how you printed a number earlier? Well, you can print constants too. Just type the print function and place the name of the constant inside the parenthesis. Let's now check how to create and print a variable. To do that, you use the exact same process, except you switch the keyword from let to var. Okay, so now you know that a constant is a value that can't be changed, while a variable can store a value that can be changed. Developers use these rules depending on the type of data they need to work with. For example, suppose you are working on a social media app that displays a user's age and you decide to store this value. Well, this value would need to be stored as a variable using the var keyword, since the value of age will change every year. Finally, it's important to know that you can't declare two variables or constants with the same name, or you will get an error. Also, Swift doesn't allow you to declare a constant or a variable that use mathematical symbols or start with a number. As a developer, you will write a lot of code over time. And while you can name your variables and constants almost anything you want, using generic terms like x and y doesn't give any information about the variable or constant, or where and how it is used. Using meaningful names that make sense in the given context will allow you and your fellow developers to easily understand what's going on. Okay, so now that you know how to declare and assign constants and variables, let's learn about data types. When it comes to programming, a data type is an attribute that describes the specific value that a constant or variable will have. So where the pots represent the variable, the type of goods that go in the pot represent the data types. For example, this pot will hold fruits. This pot will hold vegetables. Data types tell your system how to interpret values so that it can collect and use information in the appropriate format. The first data types you will learn about are those used to perform arithmetic operations. They are called integers and floating point and are represented by the keywords int and float. Integers are used to represent whole numbers and have a type named int. You have already used this type when you printed the number 10. Floating point represents numbers with a decimal point like 10.50 and have a type name float. Both integers and floating points have various subtypes, and these are used to represent how large the number can be. For example, There are two ways to store a floating point number. One way is with a float, which represents a 32-bit floating point number. What this means is that there are 32 bits of storage available for a number of type float every time you use one. This will allow you to represent a very large number before you run out of space. For example, 2,147,483,647. That's a lot. But wait, a double is also used to store a floating point number. This type has 64 bits allocated to it. That means it can store a very large number. For example, numbers in the quintillion and quadrillion magnitude can use a double. Along with numerical types, Swift provides other types, such as the Boolean data type, which is used to represent logical data. Essentially, it can have a value of either true or false. There are other types too, such as string, to represent text, but you will learn more about them later. You can also find a full list of data types from the additional reading at the end of this lesson. Okay, before you finish up, let's explore one of the main ways Swift helps you work with constants, variables, and data types to help write error-free code. Swift is known to be a type-safe language, and this essentially means that there are restrictions on mixing different data types and values. For example, constants and variables must be declared before they can be used, and you can't mix data types. This is because Swift will perform type checks before compiling your code. This means that you do not have to specify the data type when declaring constants and variables. Swift will work out the data type based on the value that you assign, and this is known as type inference. In this video, you learned about constants, variables, and data types. You also learned that Swift is a type-safe language and uses type inference to assign data types.